welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll introduce first Marta, who's joining us today from Cameroon. She's very cold, she said. Not used to the Paris weather yet. Marta Agbornyenty is an award-winning midwife, a maternal child health advocate, and the founder and executive director for Mom and Baby Foundation. This is a foundation that helps pregnant women in crisis-stricken areas by providing community workshops and also distributing emergency kits to those in need. Just last year, Marta received a prestigious Global Goalkeeper Changemaker Award from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation nonetheless, acknowledging the magnitude of her impactful work. We have Elsa here to my left. Elsa joins us from Première Urgence International, and I think we have a few of you in the room, actually. Welcome. With over 200 projects in 25 countries, they offer support to victims of humanitarian crises. She has had the mindset of a first responder for most of her life, and we'll share a little bit about that today. And to my right, last but not least, I have Sophie Mower. She leads the Strategic Engagement and Growth team at Humanitarian OpenStreetMap. She has spent the last 12 years in the humanitarian sector and the past 6 in international development, charities, and NGOs with a regional focus in Eastern and Southern Africa. OpenStreetMap, for those of you who don't know, is a free, open geographic database updated and maintained by a community of volunteers via open collaboration, and we'll hear more about it today. So she's our technologically savvy participant. And she is passionate about this cross-section between people and technology and how technology can help provide new resources for us. So I'll stop speaking now and turn it over to our participants. I wanted to start with you, actually, Elsa. We had a great conversation together in our first call about the greatest challenges that are taking place today in the world of first response. Can you tell us a bit about that and how the landscape is shifting?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us today. It's the first time for Première Urgence Internationale to attend such an event, so it's a great opportunity to we are witness of what's happening on the field, and I will share with you some of those findings. I myself, I'm from a family who was torn by war. I was born in before the Bosnian War, and my family has survived this war. So I was very early on familiar with forced displacement, refugees, and how a war can impact people for generations, communities, but also individuals for years to come. What we are witnessing today as Première Urgence Internationale is that the world is facing huge challenges regarding climate change effects, and those challenges have intensifying the vulnerabilities and the needs of people who are in every area torn by conflict and war. So we are witnessing a superposition of layers into crisis, and we need to take into consideration that no crisis is just political or just climatic or just environmental, and that it's a combination of those factors that put people in what we call the red zone. As Première Urgence Internationale, we are trying to enable people to get out of this red zone, and we do it through the One Health concept. So if you want to know more about the One Health concept, we have a great game at the First Responder Corner. You can come and we can discuss afterwards. But it's the idea that a multifactorial crisis needs a comprehensive response. We cannot just target one of the issues. We need to have activities into the human health, animal health, environmental health, and this combination of those actions will make a better place for people. That's what we are doing in all of our intervention countries. We are witnessing that even in war-affected areas, we have several episodes of drought of floods, and that people are multi-impacted by those crises. What I can say today is that, and I'm sure that a lot of people will share this thought, is no crisis is not political. Everything is about a political decision or political action or inaction. And we have the power to make a change, of course individually or with our organizations, but we also call for action for people to invest in the response, in the humanitarian response, because we are witnessing a huge funding gap. The needs overall have doubled in the past 4 years, since the 2020 COVID year, but the budget needed to respond is yet to be filled. So we call for action to invest in this response, and we call for action as well for political decisions to make a big impact. The situation that I was saying, that we have a superposition of layers, that we have crises that are both political and climatic. The best example that we are seeing today is that what's happening in Gaza. We have been working in Gaza for the past 20 years, and what we are witnessing today for the past few months is that we have constant bombing of population, of infrastructures, of water networks that are impacting the life of people, but also endangering the generation to come, the soils of the soils, sorry, and the diversity. And we are obliged to witness, to testify that we cannot meet the unprecedented needs without a ceasefire, and we need a ceasefire to be able to access the Gaza Strip, to deliver aid, and to do it in a proper way to relieve the population. So that's what of my biggest message I wanted to share. We need political action to make things better. It will not be possible otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you for these many call to actions and for the courage to speak up today and use your time on stage in this way. I commend you for that. Like a big round of applause. Thank you. This is a nice segue, actually, into some of the work that Marta does, echoing this understanding of, yes, it is first response in the moment to a single crisis that is a multi-layered emergency, and yet it's multi-generational impact, and one that goes on for longer than we can even estimate. When we were speaking, you were saying maybe 50 years sometimes is the impact on the soil, the biodiversity, the next generation. So Marta, tell us a little bit about the work that you do and how it does impact multi-generations, and why Mother and Children is how you got involved, and the role of midwives and all of that. You're the first award-winning midwife that I meet, so it's an honor.
Thank you so much. So first up, do we have mothers, fathers, grandmothers, or aspiring mothers in the hall?
Yay.
Great. So everything I'm going to say is going to completely resonate with you. So I equally come from, I'm the last of 7 daughters, so I'm like the baby of the house. And when I presented the idea of wanting to study midwifery, it was, everyone was against me. What are you looking for in this field? You're going to be underpaid, you're going to be a sit in the maternity room kind of woman. Is that the kind of life you want? And at that moment, you know, coming from a very disoriented educational background, it was a very big shotter for me. But deep inside me, there was something I knew, was calling out to me. So when I started studying midwifery, I got to discover that there was more I could do than just being a classroom student. I decided to volunteer with other organizations, local organizations in my community, and I started building this really close relationship with the women, and I got to know that there was more that these women face in the communities than we meet them at the maternity. Because the role or the whole idea people, or majority of people have for me about midwives is the fact that midwives just wait for the women to come in and they say, okay, open your legs, you have to push, you know, I have to put my fingers in and make sure the baby comes out. But no, these women have needs right from the community, and that is the angle I was looking at. So I decided to embark on a journey of not just delivering babies, but on a journey of delivering change, because, you know, starting the For Mom and Baby Foundation back in 2021 didn't just happen in a day. I started by writing books this small, because I realized during my second internship as a student midwife that women didn't know what pregnancy is all about. It will shock you to see that a woman comes before you with like an 8 months gone pregnancy, and she can't tell you what pregnancy is about, or can't tell you even one sign of labor. So those are the kind of challenges that we face, and with that, I decided to write this kind of books, you know, give it out to them, and they decided having interest, because I don't know about in your various countries, but in my country, when you talk about a book, or once people see a book this big, everyone is scared, and no one will want to read it. So I felt like putting this information in really small and handy packages would make it really easy, and it worked. But yet again, I felt like that wasn't all I could do. Went ahead to create a blog, a Facebook blog, which is still existing, called Marty's Midwifery Diary, to put out like really informative, helpful content for mothers, their families and babies, and that really worked too. But yet again, I felt like that wasn't all I could do, and then I went ahead to create the For Mom and Baby Foundation, which is why I'm seated here to talk to you. And this foundation has been really helpful, because I'm one person who believes in not just engaging in, or not waiting to have it all figured out, all clear before I engage or start doing it. I venture into it unclear. So once I start doing it, that's when I start putting the pieces together. And that was completely the case for us when we started in 2021. We launched the foundation with this emergency kit, which is a bag which contains like basic materials to be able to assist women to have a safe and effective delivery. So we give these kits out to them, and it helps them to be their own first responders before we even show up. Because, for example, labor isn't, you know, labor is very spontaneous, and you can't be sure of your presence there when the woman starts, you know, experiencing the labor signs. So we give them these emergency kits, which will help them, you know, be able to, for example, when the mucus plug, that's like the, what holds the pregnancy in, kind of at the cervix, to put it in a simpler language, once it comes out, at that moment, the woman's system is very fragile. So most times women just get like towels, anything around, and just puts in their vagina, which is very, very uncomfortable and could easily infect them. But with our kids, they can easily get the maternity pad and put it in their, you know, in their private pad, and, you know, get really, really comfortable and, you know, not get infected. So that's kind of like an introduction of what we do at For Mom and Baby Foundation. And so far, we've been able to distribute over 1,200 kits to women in these crisis-stricken areas, because my country is currently going through a socio-political crisis, and you find women living in bushes instead of the hospitals. And it's really, really horrific, because sometimes you find you go to some of these bushes and you see skeletons of like a woman, and then a really little skeleton of like a baby close to her, where both of them had died and there was no one who knew about it. So those are the kind of realities we face, and yeah, there's equally a big funding gap, like she said, and we're getting there, and we're looking forward to helping more and more women. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Maybe we take one big breath here. That was a big share. Thank you. There are a few things I heard in what you shared that will be an interesting segue into the work that Sophie does at OpenStreetMap. One, this idea of being your own self-responder and empowering women on the ground with information. I heard that piece. The other piece is you're towing the line between preventative and first response, because it is in two separate worlds. And I think we've talked about that with all of you pretty much in the preparation of this session, that there is a continuum between what needs to take place before, between crises, and then the first response. And there needs to be interesting feedback loops in between so that we can alter our response accordingly. So tell us a little bit, Sophie, about the work that you do with OpenStreetMap and how you're getting people on the ground involved as well as part of this feedback loop.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So we've heard a lot over the last 3 days here at ChangeNOW about how those communities that are most affected by climate change are those communities that are living in developing countries in remote parts of the world, in flood-prone areas. But when you go onto the map and you search for those communities, it is quite literally blank. It's blank. These communities are not visible on the map. There is 1 billion people who are not visible on the map. And that means that when we work with first responders, those actors don't know where people are, how to get to them, whether or not they have access to basic services. And that makes it really difficult for us to be able to provide life-saving response techniques, activities, etc., to be able to save those people's lives and livelihoods. So, yeah, so it's a big project. Just a quick hands up, who's heard of OpenStreetMap before? Okay, cool. So OpenStreetMap is the Wikipedia of maps, so anyone can contribute to it at any time. But to be clear, I am not from OpenStreetMap. I am from Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, or HOT, if you want to shorten it. And essentially, we were set up in 2010 in response to the Haiti earthquake. So first response is in our DNA. It's in our roots. It's where we started. But what we're kind of working on, and I'm hearing these, and you mentioned feedback loops, and it's the same with you guys as well. We're moving to a space where we need to be better prepared. We know that El Nino is coming. I'm based at the Eastern Southern Africa Open Mapping Hub in Nairobi, Kenya. And we know that there is going to be mass devastation as a result of El Nino. So we need to be prepared. So some of the things that we're doing as part of HOT is working with different types of communities, different groups of people, to see how they can better respond and integrate open data into their workflows so that we can make better decisions on where to take people. So let me give you an example. We're working on a project in Zimbabwe. We know that mass flooding is going to be coming. So what we're doing is working with a local NGO called Caritas. Caritas is an evacuation NGO. They want to know where to take people. So, yeah, great. Okay, we've got a community of 300 people. Where do we take them when we know that their flood is coming? Okay, so we know that there's a church, a community center in this location. At the moment, it's not on the map, so we add it to the map. We also need to know, what is that building made out of? Is there a trench around it already? Is the structure of that building going to be able to hold our community of 300? Once we get that community of 300 there, after drawing buildings and roads onto satellite imagery and building out what we call the base map, we then need to know, okay, so what's the risk of taking these people here? What's the risk of increased gender-based violence if toilets are not segregated in the place that we're taking people? What if there's only one toilet, which means an increased prevalence of waterborne diseases? So this is the kind of data that really makes a difference to the decisions that local governments, NGOs, and community members themselves are making to be able to advocate for their own change, their own livelihoods and lives, and being able to make those decisions and have those positive feedback loops so that people aren't losing as much as they might do. So, yeah.
Thank you for that share and the concrete example of what you're doing. So we have a few minutes left for this conversation, and I love that you come from such different spheres, and yet we are hearing echoes of the same need for support, whether it's the allocation of resources, the involvement of stakeholders that can help fund those resources towards your efforts. What else have we not touched on today that you feel is really needed in order for you to be able to continue with these efforts and to have even greater impact?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question, and one of the things that I've really learned from being in this space today, over the last 3 days is about collaboration and partnerships and investment in young people and young enterprises and innovation. So the methodology for adding features to the map and then being able to use the map is that we mobilize our community of volunteers. In our most recent project, we are working on mobilizing 1 million volunteers to map that 1 billion people. So what we need to do is invest in those people who are adding to the map. But we're not just giving them the technical skills and the technical expertise, we also need to give people the opportunity to advocate for their own data, which is so important for people as individuals, for communities, for organizations. The next part of that workflow is that we then work with our teams of expertise to make kind of technical recommendations on what kinds of maps we're making. Once we've decided on whether on the different type of map it's going to be, we then train the organizations that we're working with on how to use that data, because at the end of the day, a map's a map. It's the person behind the map that makes the decision, that can interpret that data and make a considered decision on how and where we can evacuate people, for example. So I think for me, like, my biggest learning is that we really need to invest in the people, as Brené Brown would say, and making sure that we're not just providing people with technical expertise to be able to do one specific thing, but providing them with a holistic approach, capacity, building out that capacity in leadership, in advocacy, in understanding their own data, and then applying what they're learning from that data. So for me, it's about education and capacity building.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I really share the same idea with Sophie, because I really think investment is one side we should really pay attention to or focus a lot on. And when I talk about investment, I'm talking about funding, and not just funding in terms of financial, but funding in terms of social and funding in terms of political. So when I talk about funding with respect to financial, I'm talking about, please invest in us. You have your parents, your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, and you know what goes on, in these stages of life. And particularly for me, I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm from Cameroon, and the maternal mortality rate there is at 438 deaths per 100,000 live births. And globally, once in every 2 minutes, a woman dies while giving life. And this happens approximately 800 times daily. So this is a huge call for concern. And I really believe that starting from, I never consider my work small, because I believe that saving just one life cancels that woman from just being another statistic in a global stage as such. So we need to invest more to be able to save the lives of these women, to be able to save the lives of these babies. And that investment has to be done by, continuously carrying like seminars, workshops we carry out for midwives, because our work at For Mom and Baby Foundation is two-sided. On one side, we work with the mothers and the babies, and on the other side, we work with the midwives, who are the primary caregivers to these women. So we really believe that touching all these sides will be able to make more impact. So yeah, I really buy the idea of investment. Please invest in us all, because we do a lot on the field. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will add, please invest now, because we don't have time. Time is of the essence now. The climatic change is there. The effect, we are all witnessing it on the field. So we cannot wait for another COP or another political summit. We need action, we need investment, and we need it now. Change now. Right now.
And we'll end the panel on this. Just wanted to highlight two things that I took away from what I heard today. One, no amount of effort is too small. And yes, we need big investments, we need big support, but also everything counts. And then starting where you are, I feel like that's a common thread between all of your projects. You know, not necessarily knowing how big of an impact you can make, but having this intuition of this is the right thing to do, this makes sense, going forward and building on that. Because if we wait for everything to be hashed out, we will miss the timing as well. So thank you. A big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.